Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnaprishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashatadishatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. We're going to continue our discussion with the 15th chapter. However, before that, let's do a quick recap of 14th chapter. Chapter number 14, titled as The Puppet Show. How many of you were there for this session 2 weeks before? Please raise your hands. So does anyone remember anything? This is one of the very, very interesting, relevant, practical, immediate, something which can bring about immediate change in one's life. That was a discussion. What do you remember? Anything remembers? Anyone remembers anything about this chapter? What was Krishna's topic of discussion here? 14th chapter. Titled as The Modes of Material Nature. Trai Gunya Vishyaveda Nisrai Gunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvando Nitvasto Yoga Shema Atmavan. Krishna spoke that in second chapter. Trai Veda Nistrai Yoga. He talked about there are three modes of material nature. The whole idea of Vedic knowledge is to transcend that, to go beyond the clutches of the modes of material nature. Finally, in the 14th chapter, Krishna elaborated what is this modes of material nature. Who remembers? Yeah, three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. Thank you very much. What else? What else do you remember of the session? Yes, thank you for translating English into Hindi. He just said Sattva, goodness, passion, ignorance. So look like English to Hindi translation. Perfectly done. What else do you remember beyond it? Characteristics. What are the characteristics of goodness, passion, ignorance? So these three modes represents invisible ropes that ties each and every one of us, not only in the human species, but across all the species, which comprises to be 8.4 million species. So the 8.4 million species and these three modes of material nature, which means guna means rope, which binds each one of us. Therefore, I titled this chapter or the subject matter as a puppet show. If in case you've ever seen a puppet show, you'll see the puppeteer dancing, but you see the puppet dancing, but you don't see the puppeteer controlling the puppet. Similarly, all of us are like a puppet, be controlled by the three modes of material nature, Sattva Guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. While discussing in this chapter, I was making a point, if you understand their characteristics, then you can manipulate and make a transition from the lower modes to the higher modes. And to the degree you move on to the higher modes from Tamaguna, Rajaguna to Sattva Guna, to that degree you find stability in life. And the example we had given is of a cap seller to help you, give you immediate example of what it means. In other words, in different situations, in similar situations, we often give, we ourselves at different times in a similar situation will give different responses. Or in similar situation, different people will give different responses. If, just like a smartphone, when it is out of signal, there is only one response. The call would not happen. If that is the case, then why we individuals, human beings, which according to modern science, we are also an advanced machine, then why do we give so different responses for a similar situation? And it is all because of the influence of goodness, passion, ignorance. So when are we bound, when are we covered by these three modes of material nature? The moment living entity takes birth from the womb of a mother, he gets immediately covered over by the three modes of material nature. And to what degree these modes act on him depends on how you carry out your life, what kind of lifestyle you have, the kind of hairstyle, the kind of dress you wear, the type of food you like, you eat, the kind of entertainment you visit to watch, everything, how you speak, how you respond, everything about your life is governed and dictated by three modes, which means prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manete. In other words, it seems to us as if I am the doer, But in fact, in reality, we are not the doer because our control is in the hand of a puppeteer. We're just acting the way the strings are moved. And then we talked about how these modes, according to the time of the day, have an influence. Early morning hours, which means 2 hours before the sunrise, which is called as Brahmurta time, is said to be the ideal time for cultivating mode of goodness. The moment sunrise happens, the passion increases till the time of sunset. After sunset, we naturally begin to feel drowsy, and it's a time of rest. That is called as Tamaguna. We also spoke about how these modes influence leadership, how a leader in goodness, passion, ignorance will behave, and understanding the importance of it and understanding how these modes influence everything about us. Obviously, the choice is that we all need to move to mode of goodness. To move to goodness, we need to remember a formula. We need to give up our attachment to the wrong things and aversion to the right things, because it is very easy to give away good things, but very difficult, or I would say this way, it's very difficult to acquire a good habit, but very easy to acquire a bad quality. Yes or no? To cultivate bad conduct, bad behavior, that happens just naturally for us. But for us to develop a good conduct, it takes an effort and endeavor. That is a point, which means mode of goodness lifestyle. For that, we have to give up our aversion to the right things and attachment to the wrong things. And for that, Krishna describes in the 14th chapter how your lifestyle should be. Pure lifestyle, clean clothes, vegetarian diet, etc., etc. Those things have been described. And most importantly, Krishna says these three modes of material nature are Maya energy. Devi Yesh Gunamaya Mama Maya Duratya. If you want to go beyond the influence of three modes of material nature, till the time we are influenced or controlled by these three gunas, sattva, rajaga, tamaguna, there is no question of your independent life. You can just keep on celebrating Independence Day year after year, but you're still dependent and controlled. And if you really want to experience independent life, for that purpose, you have to take shelter too of Lord Shri Krishna. He, being the master of material energy, can cut the pangs of this modes and set us free from the three modes of material nature. So that was the subject matter at large in the 14th chapter, wherein if you understand the concept of three modes of material nature, then you can understand what kind of personality you have. Understanding what kind of personality you have, you can determine what kind of future would you have. There is nothing like victim mentality. We create victimhood. We are not victim of anyone else's endeavors. That was the subject matter in this 14th chapter, where Krishna spoke eventually about how to set oneself free. But Krishna says we cannot have Krishna and Maya together. We cannot live our life by having one feet living a life, spiritual life, another feet trying to fulfill our material desires. It's just like putting your two legs in two different boats and we will eventually drown. Krishna says you have to make a choice. Either you choose between me or you choose with my energy. If you choose my energy, you continue your life in what they call samsara chakra etasmin jantur agyana mohita. How many of you have sat in a Ferris wheel? Remember, if you're from North India, the Shara festival or the Share festival में वो Ferris wheel लगती थी. There's a round circular wheel. When you go up, you become excited. And when you come down, you're terrified. So like that Chitraketu Maha says, samsara chakra etasmin jantur agyana mohitaha brahmayam sukham va dukkham va bhunkate sarvatra sarvada. Like this living entity is caught into this Ferris wheel of life, sometimes going to have heavenly planets, higher planets, becomes happy, sometimes comes to lower planets, become miserable. Like that, at all times and all situations, bhunkate sarvatra sarvada, sarvatra sarvada, at all times and all situations, he is undergoing the experience of happiness and misery. And this is what happened if somebody takes shelter of material nature or energy, they continue to move on in this material world. And now begins the 15th chapter to help us make a better decision of whose shelter to take, of spiritual energy or material energy, of Krishna or Maya. Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak 15th chapter, and he gives us the opportunity to cut our pangs of attraction to this material world, material nature, by understanding what spiritual world is. Um, because some of you seems to be new here, so just to help you understand, Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, there are few things that you have to have as a base understanding. First of all, Krishna said, Evam parampara praptam imam raj rishya mahata sakala neha yoga nashta parantapa yoga. In other words, Krishna said, this divine knowledge which I am giving to you, Arjuna, why am I giving to you? This knowledge was lost. Yoga nashta parantapaha. Under the influence of time, this knowledge was lost. I am reinstating this ancient knowledge which I had spoken to Imam Vivaswate Yoga. I have spoken to the sun god Vivaswan long, long ago in the history. And from there, sun god to Manu, Ikshvaku, finally it had continued on this planet Earth. But eventually it got lost. Today I am re-establishing. So Bhagavad Gita is just not a mere conversation conducted by Krishna to help Arjuna to make a decision to fight or not fight. To fight or not fight, it's just a pretext for Krishna to establish the ancient educational system through Bhagavad Gita. Now, if such an ancient educational system which Krishna is establishing, which means there is something more than Arjuna to fight or not fight, the discussion would not only be limited to it, because when Krishna spoke this knowledge long ago in the history to Sun God didn't have a question, should I fight or not fight? Which means to fight or not fight is just a pretext for Krishna to speak. So if that is only a pretext, then what is the context of Bhagavad Gita? What is the main subject matter of Bhagavad Gita? The main subject matter, the main teaching of Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yuveti tattvaha. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjana. Those of you who are not familiar with Sanskrit, let me break it down for you. Janma, karma, cha, me, divyam. Arjuna, my janma, my karma. Divya means transcendental, which means they are not bound by the modes of material nature. The three modes which we just discussed. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha. Evam means certainly, yo means yo veti tatvataha. One who knows the truth about the divinity of my birth and activities. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma. Tyaktva deham. Tyaktva means giving away. What? Deha means body. When you quit this body, punarjanma, you do not take birth again in this world. Tyaktva deham punarjanma. What is that? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti swarjana. Naiti mam eti swarjana. In other words, tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti, which means punarjanma naiti. You do not take birth again. You come back to me. This is the context. Context is not Arjuna to fight or not. That is a very superficial, high-level understanding. In-depth meaning of Krishna is to establish and to tell there are two worlds, there are two creations in this overall cosmic world. One where we today live, called as material world, which Krishna tags it at Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. Dukhalayam means the place of suffering. Ashashvatam, which means temporary. Now, anything and everything in this world, would you agree? Regardless of whatever success you may get in your life, but eventually it is temporary. Even if India today wins this World Cup, but that happiness is limited by, because after 4 years there will be another World Cup, another World Cup champion. After that, if another country becomes a champion, the previous country would not rejoice in the history I was a champion. Anything and everything that we have lives only for a short while. Even your own body lives for a short while. As sure as death, if you have taken birth, death is as sure. Our relationships are short-lived. Our job is short-lived. Our wealth is short-lived. We may enjoy the happiness that temporarily comes to us, but it is only short-lived. It is not. And on top of it, dukhalayam. At each point of time in this world when we are living, regardless of, you may be the CEO of Microsoft or a beggar at the street of Hinjawadi, it is not the mosquito loves the beggar at Hinjawadi, but not the CEO of Microsoft. You know, adi bhautika, adi atmika, adi daivika kleshas, They torture every living entities. Adhibautika because of other living entities. That could be human beings, that could be mosquitoes or anything. Adhyatmika because of one's own mind. Adhidaivika because of nature. Who is protected against this tapa or kleshas? For that reason, Krishna says, this world, dukhalayam ashashvatam. However, abrahma bhuvanaloka punar avartano arjuna. Mamupetya tu kaunteya punar janmana vidyate. Arjuna, abrahma bhuvanaloka. From Brahma lok to Patal lok, punar janma avartano. This is a place of, again and again you keep on taking birth. However, mam upetya tu kaunteya, one who attains me, punarjanma na vidyate. So like that, until 14th chapter, Krishna has again and again introduced the concept. There are two worlds, material world and spiritual world. Finally, in the 14th chapter, when Krishna speaks about how in material world, you're bound by the three modes of material nature. You may call yourself a free citizen of a free country, but in truth, you're always in bondage. Therefore, to help us make the right choice, why we should re-establish our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord, Krishna now begins to speak the 15th chapter, where he tells us about the spiritual world, and he gives us the reason why we should aim for spiritual life, why we should aim for spiritual world to resume our spiritual life. And that's how the discussion goes. Somebody may ask a question, no, I'm quite happy in my life in this world. I don't want to go to spiritual world. Don't worry, Krishna will give you good enough reason why you cannot be happy. Even your life here, at all times, you're dependent on the mercy of the Lord. You may think like that, your food, your water, everything comes from the deep part or municipality. If there is no rainwater, there won't be any drinking water or washing water. And if there is no agriculture, if there is no enough sunlight, if the weather is not functioning accordingly, you will not have grains to eat. The grains are not provided by the government or the DMart. Everything is provided under the supervision of Lord through the medium of nature. At all times we are dependent. Because of lack of education, we have forgotten of it. Let's begin. This was just an introduction to set all those people who have come for the first time at the same level, so we can get into the 15th chapter. Now Krishna begins to talk about these two worlds more explicitly, and he gives an analogy how these two worlds are interrelated to each other. And Krishna says this world in which we live in is nothing but the perverted reflection of spiritual world. And for that he gives a beautiful analogy. Please repeat after me. Urdhvamulam madha shakham Ashwatham prahuravayam Chandamsi yasya parnani Yastam veda savedave. So Krishna says, well, it looks like there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upwards and its branches down, whose leaves are Vedic hymns. And when who knows this tree is a knower of the Veda, that will be a detail. I'm not going to detail, but just to give you high level understanding. Krishna says, well, there seems to be a tree who has his root upwards and branches downwards. Have you ever seen such a tree? Have you ever seen such a tree? Have you ever been at the bank of a river? If yes, and if there is a tree at the bank of a river, then you have seen a tree which is upside down. Yes or no? Upside tree means reflection. That's the point Krishna is saying, which means there is a tree which has its roots upward, branches downward, which is referring to this material world. If the reflection exists, which means the original identity should exist. This is how, through analogical or metaphorically, subject matters are discussed. Because people in those days had the brain to understand through the metaphor. So like this, Krishna says, the real world or our home is spiritual world. However, we are caught up into this perverted reflection in which we are trying to find our happiness. Imagine in the reflection of a mango tree, you try to pluck mango. Can you pluck a mango from the reflected tree? You will be frustrated. And therefore, how much ever endeavor we make for success, for happiness, how many times we experience frustration? Anyone here experienced frustration in the last 1 week? Please raise your hand. पिछले एक हफ्ते में किस किस को फ्रस्ट्रेशन का एहसास हुआ? हाथ खड़ा करो, लंबा खड़ा करो। कितने लोगों को पिछले 2 दिनों में फ्रस्ट्रेशन का एक्सपीरियंस हुआ है? हाथ खड़ा करो, लंबा खड़ा करो। कितने लोगों को आज सुबह से ही फ्रस्ट्रेशन का एक्सपीरियंस हुआ है? एंड हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू से प्रभु जी डेली की कहानी है? Life is designed in such a way, somehow or other you become frustrated because we're trying to find happiness in a perverted reflected tree. To give an example, very interesting food for thought here. I like to quote this story. It's attributed to some individual which is not certified. I would not name that person, but there was a great king who went around winning over many kingdoms, and at a very young age, he's come to death. He was about to die. He called his minister. He said, well, I want you to write down my will. And my will is such, when I die, I want my coffin must be carried by my doctor. He says, I want 3 things in my will. First thing, my coffin should be carried by my doctors, my physician. Second, the pathway which I will take to the cemetery, that pathway should be strewn or decorated with all the wealth that I have looted in my attempts to win over different kingdoms. And third, my hands should be dangling out of the coffin when my dead body has been taken to cemetery. Making sense? So he asked 3 things I want you to fulfill after my death. First, my body must be carried by my physician, doctor. Second, the pathway must be decorated with all the wealth that I have looted from different kingdoms. And third, my hands must be dangling out of the coffin. So the minister said, so be it. But he said, can I know the purport? What do you mean? He said, yes, let me tell you what I mean. He said, I want my physicians to carry my dead body. I want to convey to all the public who would assemble to bid me farewell. What has happened to me is going to happen to you. If the best of the doctors could not save the king, what do you think who will save you? Death is as sure to happen. Hare Krishna. Second thing, then he said, I want the pathway should be decorated with all the wealth that I have looted. So minister asked, what will happen? He said, well, all my life went struggling to acquire money, to which I struggled the most. I took up so much anxiety. My family members said, do you have time? I always told them I don't have time. My kids asked for time. I said, I have no time. My doctors told me, take some time out for your physical well-being. I said, I have no time. For one thing, ye dil mange more. I wanted to make more and more money. So I want people to learn, whatever I have earned will remain behind. I cannot take any amount of bank balance, any amount of wealth that I have earned. And then minister said, sir, all right, it all makes sense. What about the third point? Hands dangling out of the coffin. Anyone would like to make a guess what this king wanted to convey by his hands dangling out of the coffin? Yes. Khali haath aaye the, khali haath hi jana hai. How many of you agree with these 3 statements that the king said? How many of you say 100% correct? Please raise your hand. अच्छा जी, फिर जीवन में करने के लिए बचा क्या है? 100% अगर आपने हाथ खड़ा कर दिया है, so what do you really want to do in your life? I mean, we are told in the world that we live today, the goal of life is to make money. And we're like a mad person running after that. And we think if we have money, we'll have happiness, but which never we find, we continue. If that's not what you're going to do, if you agree with what this king said, what other path you have? So here, chapter 15, Krishna will give you another path which you can take for blissful life. So this is one lesson from that. Let's begin the chapter with an acronym HOME. Let's take a look at it. Home or hotel. It's a summer vacation time going on. Imagine for a second, you go out for summer vacation to, let's say, Goa. You check in into a resort for 3-day, 3-night stay with your family. And after a night stay, your wife orders a carpenter, says, well, change all the furniture here. She gets some new furniture. She gets the, painter to paint the walls of your room which you have rented out. She buys a new TV. She buys a new fridge. She changes the main door of the room that you've checked in. How many of you will call that lady to be crazy lady? I mean, this is not your house. What are you doing? This is a rented place. You have rented out for 3 days. And you have spent 3 days, which you were supposed to live as a vacation, trying to change the whole thing inside it as if you're going to live forever. Isn't it? How long are you going to live in your rented body? How long are you going to live in your rented body? Is it rented or owned? It's rented, it's not yours. If it was owned, then you will decide what to do with it. But you cannot decide. You did not choose the time and the place of your birth, nor you can define when you quit it. And to quit it prematurely is a crime, which means you're not the owner. Which means if you break the contract of your rental property, then it is considered to be a crime. So you cannot. So for how long are you going to stay in this rental property? That's the point here. So as you acknowledge that lady to be a crazy woman, but she's trying to make a temporary stay into a permanent stay. Similarly, how much time and energy today's society spends on taking care of temporary accommodation while forgetting the needs of the individual who is residing within this temporary accommodation, which means the Jivatma. First of all, we don't even know there is a Jivatma within this rental property. What to speak about understanding the needs of the Jivatma. So, if in case you agreed the lady was crazy, give a double tap on your back, because there is double crazy within us who is trying to really protect this body, which we can't. So, home or hotel, let's take a look at it, what Krishna says. The material world, a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Just as the banyan tree has a reflection in water, similarly, spiritual world has a reflection which is called as material world. So when it is a reflection, which means upside down, if it is place of dukhalayam, ashashvatam, this is a place of suffering and temporariness, then what would be the real place? Full of eternal happiness and eternity. Therefore, the life in spiritual world is defined as Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat means eternity, Chit means knowledge, and Ananda means bliss. Any one of you were born with a BTech degree? You were born in utter ignorance, right? So this is a place of dukhalayam. You know, you take birth, you die, temporary. We are born in full ignorance, so much so ignorance. अपने को अपना माँ बाप का नाम नहीं पता. कैसी संतान हो आप बताओ जरा. माँ बाप बच्चे को बोलते हैं बेटा माँ बाप, and then beta कहता है हाँ बाप, and my yes and no. We don't even know who our damn mother and father is. Such is the level of ignorance. And yet we say there is nobody more intelligent than I. We are the most intelligent species. It's just incredible illusion we kind of put into it. So that's the idea. Material world, perfected reflection of the spiritual world. Therefore, understanding this, Krishna urges his readers to cut down this tree. How do you cut down this tree? Which means, cut down this tree is a metaphor, which means cut down our attachment to this material life. And to cut down our attachment or to reduce our attachment to this life, Krishna says we need to do two things. Find or take shelter of one who knows Tattva Darshinaha, one who has seen the truth. Find that person, which is in English called as bona fide guru, take his shelter and surrender to the Lord. That is a way we can destroy the bonds of attachment to this tree. Then Arjuna asks, my dear Lord, how do I surrender? What is the means to surrender? And then Krishna says, very beautiful verse, please repeat after me. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvande vimukta sukadukha smagne Gacchantya padamavyayam ta. How to surrender or how to cut this tree of attachment? Prior to that, we have to take a shelter. So Krishna says we need to take care of three things. Nirmana, moha, jit, sanga, dosha. Three things. Nirmana, give up the false prestige. Till the time we are proud enough to think that I know everything, how would you ever take guidance from anyone? And it's very interesting for anything and everything when it's about material life, when it's about technology, basic things, that all works with guidance. We'll have health experts telling us how to take care of your health. Then there'll be a life insurance policy. We'll have some financial expert advising you where to invest, how to invest. Then we undergo career counseling. Yes or no? For everything in our life that we do, we have somebody to guide us. But when it comes to spiritual life, हमको बिना कुछ पढ़े जाने आत्म साक्षात्कार होता है, इतना कॉन्फिडेंस होता है, किसी से सुनने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, हम सब जानते हैं. That's ridiculousness. That doesn't work like that. So nirmana moha, give up this sense of false prestige. Otherwise you really can never ever really understand. You cannot understand through the process of hearing. The process of receiving Vedic knowledge is tat shrunu. Krishna says by hearing. That's nirmana. Moha refers to illusion. That's a big subject. But the basic idea of illusion is, how do I say? Maybe let's give a try. What could be the greatest illusion? If in case you have been attending the program, you would have heard from me before, or if in case you have realized, every living entity is put under a spell of illusion. Illusion means which is not there, but it looks like it is there. For example, somebody considers a rope to be a snake. Well, there is no snake, but he considers rope to be a snake. This is called as illusion. Now, can you give me some example, which means it should be common to all and it should be there for everyone? It is not for you, but this is illusion is common to all. Any food for thought quickly? What could be the thing? Yes. Oh, mirage. She's talking about mirage. हम जब गर्मी के मौसम में, in the summer season when we are on the highway, the reflection appears as if ahead there is a water, but it's a mirage. It's called as illusion. Okay, great. Mirage. Okay, correct. I was asking more deeper illusion, which is correct. What else? You've been around for a while. Wait. Let's ask those who have been new. What could be the illusion? Yeah, that's all because of defects of your senses. Do you know there are 4 defects in us? Okay, how many of you say I'm a perfected being? Raise your hand. शर्म हंस रहे हो तुम लोग? तारीफ कर रहा हूं मैं, पूछ रहा हूं. How many of you agree you are God's perfect creation and you are the last one? Nobody before you, nobody after you will be created like you. I am the special creation. So some of you say, I don't know why you're laughing. I'm seriously asking this question. So, are you the perfect being or there are imperfections? What do you say? How many of you say there are imperfections within us? Raise your hands. That is the beginning of nirmana, giving up your false prestige, acknowledging there are some defects. Okay, do you know what are the defects that you have? There are 4 common defects that everyone has. You don't know? Come on. आपकी इंजीनियरिंग का कोई फायदा नहीं, वो तो पहले भी नहीं था. हम इंजीनियरिंग करने के बाद पता नहीं कौन सी जॉब करते हैं, उसके बाद भी ट्रेनिंग चलती रहती है, बट इतने साल घिसने के बाद एटलीस्ट इतना तो पता होना चाहिए था हमारे अंदर डिफेक्ट क्या है. आप दूसरों में डिफेक्ट ढूंढते रहते हो, अपना डिफेक्ट नहीं पता. देयर आर 4 डिफेक्ट्स. राइट डाउन इफ यू वांट टू मेमोराइज अ सिंपल एक्रोनिम. MISC, MISC formula. And tell me quickly, give a raise of hand if you agree or not. First defect, tendency to commit mistakes. कितने लोगों से गलतियां होती हैं? हाथ खड़ा करो, हाथ खड़ा करो फटाफट. समझ आया? हिंदी इंग्लिश दोनों बोल रहा हूँ, मराठी आती नहीं वरना वो भी बोलता. ठीक है. टेंडेंसी टू कमिट मिस्टेक्स. सेकेंड, टेंडेंसी टू बी इल्यूजन्ड, धोखा खाना. एग्जाम्पल मिराज, एंड प्रभु वाज गिविंग एग्जाम्पल ऑफ सनलाइट एटसेट्रा. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू became bewildered by that? Raise your hand. So 100%? All right. How many of you say imperfect senses? जब तक रोशनी है मैं देख सकता हूँ, रोशनी चलेगी तो मैं अपने हाथ को भी नहीं देख सकता. Yes or no? How many of you agree with that? Imperfect senses. Eyes have a short range. Ears can only hear between 20 to 20,000 hertz. It's a limited, imperfect. And the 4th, तो 3 तो सब एग्री करते हैं. चौथा, cheating propensity. Cheating, धोखा देना. And simple example of धोखा देना is our nature to speak a lie. How many of you? Raise your hand. शर्माना नहीं, हाथ भी नहीं खड़ा करोगे, 100% आप करते हो। आपके हाथ खड़ा करने से बता। So these are 4 defects. Congratulations, you graduated from the first year of engineering. आपका कुछ समझा जीवन के बारे में, spiritual engineering. These are 4 defects that we have. So nirmana moha. So we are put into 3 types of illusion. Please write down what are the 3 illusion. And the acronym for that is CPE. Medical term होती है ना कुछ CPE? Anyone from medical field? CPR होता है, कोई बात नहीं, छोटा भाई. ये CPE है. All right, what is CPE illusion? I am the controller. What controller? You can't even control the nature's urge. Can you hold on? How many times when you're traveling in a bus long distance, you climb the bus with a prayer, Prabhu, 6 घंटे के लिए. How many people? Yes or no? 6 घंटे के लिए मेरे शरीर पर नियंत्रण रखना. I cannot handle a nature's call right now. Bus is not going to stop. How many of you had that experience? Yes or no? Is it truth of life? All right. Yet we say I am the controller. What controller? यार शरीर को तो control करके दिखाओ. All right. C. P. I am the proprietor. What do you own? When you don't own your own body, everything that you have acquired is through this rented property. How can it be your own property when this rented property is not yours? So what proprietor you are? And when you die, you leave all that property behind. So how are you the proprietor? So you're not the controller, you're not the proprietor. E. Let's make a guess. What could E stand for? Huh? I am not even the enjoyer. I'll tell you the definition of enjoyment in a short while. So that's the meaning of moha. Jit sanga dosha. Jit means victory. Sanga dosha means faulty association. Faulty association means give the association of people who identified with their body and they think body is all in all. That's all faulty association. When you give up these 3 things, then you can surrender. Then actually you can get real education and make progress like that. All right, move forward. Arjuna pondered, what if one doesn't want to go to the spiritual world? Krishna said, wait, calm down. Let me give you an answer. Then you decide that. And then Krishna begins to say, that brings our second section of this chapter, O for options. Krishna then begins to, in this section of verses, he gives a glimpse to Arjuna about what spiritual world and spiritual life is. And once having gone to the spiritual world, nobody has to ever return. Let's take a look. A fantastic set of verses. Please repeat loudly after me. Na tadbhasyate surya. A little more enthusiastically, huh? मैं नोट कर रहा हूं, जिसकी मुंह से आवाज नहीं निकलेगी डिनर कैंसिल, ओके? ना तद्भास्यते सूर्यो ना शाशंक न पावकं यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धामा परमं मम. That supreme abode of mind, spiritual world, does not require sun, moon, nor fire or electricity. Those who reach it there never return to this world. Yad gatvan anivartante tad dhama paramam mama. Straightforward Sanskrit. You don't even have to be a scholar to understand this. Yad gatva, jo wahan jaate na nivartante, never comes back. Tad dham, dham means ghar, hari dham. Many people write outside their home, dham means home. That home, abode, paramam mama. Paramam means the highest, is the highest abode in this whole creation. After going there, you never come back. And it does not depend on Surya, Chandra, fire, electricity. These are material attributes. It is a self-illumined world. You don't need anything. Because if there's no sunlight, you cannot function. If there's no moonlight, your food will not have taste. So do we become dependent? Krishna says there is no dependency on anything. It's self-sustaining, self-illumined. It's a life of true freedom. And then Krishna said, Arjuna, wait a second. I am your father. Mamivam su jivaloke jivbhuta sanatana. I can hear the Prabhus here, but I can't hear the sound of the mothers here. Loudly, please. Mamivam su jivaloke Jivabhuta sanatanaha mana shashtani indriyani prakati sthani kashyati. ममई अंश, मेरे ही अंश हैं जीव लोके. जो इस दुनिया में जितने भी जीव हैं किसके अंश हैं? मेरे ही अंश हैं. It's a very simple thing. The parents, how many of you here are parents? Please raise your hand. How many mothers or how many fathers already have a child? Of course, everyone is a son and daughter, somebody. You have experienced parenthood. You have seen the birth of child. As being a mother and father, you had no control on what was going inside the womb of a mother. Yes or no? Then how can you say it is mine? Just because it came out of your body? But who created that within your body? What control you had? You even didn't knew what what living entity. Neither the father can take a credit. I gave birth to a boy or girl. What does father have got to do with it? Of course, there is a idea of karmana evadikar. Sorry, what is that? Karmana deva netrena jantur dehe utpatte. So what jivatma enters into the womb of a mother, it depends on his own karma. Past life, what activities has done, accordingly he gets a set of parents and he takes birth. So Krishna says, Mamaivam Sujeev Loka, all these living entities, Jivatma, which means souls, they are my part and parcels. Jeev Bhuta Sanatana, Parantu, Sanatan means बहुत लंबे समय से वो जीवात्मा इस दुनिया में आके भूत के समान रह रहा है. Does anyone understand the concept of bhoot? Ghost? It's a double SIM concept. One mobile phone with two SIM card, one body with two subtle bodies. That is called as ghost, possessed. And it's a fact. People get possessed. When you lack a purity, when you lack your own spiritual strength, then there are so many untimely death that happens. Those subtle bodies, they keep moving around as pret. Pret means when you do not have a physical body. That is called a pret atma. They're all over the place. And the moment they find somebody, either because of his karmic account is low, he has done a lot of sin in the past, or else he lives a very tamoguna life, impure life, say can very easily enter such bodies. Any one of you here have had an experience with ghost? Should I tell you some of my experience? I'll not be able to complete the session. I don't know what's the time. I can tell you, all that is said, night time is not the good time. Nothing going to happen to me. We're good friends with each other. But I don't know about you. You might get into trouble. So let's take a public vote. How many of you like to hear the ghost story? I give a disclaimer. I'm not responsible what happens afterwards. Huh? Okay. Let me complete this. I'll come to it. At the end, you remind me of the ghost story. Let's continue with it. Manah shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani kashyati. Krishna says, Manah shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani kashyati. Karsha means friction. Unnecessary you're suffering in this world. So Krishna told Arjuna, Arjuna, you're struggling. Arjuna said, not at all. I'm enjoying my life. Krishna said, wait. Let me give you an example. Here. All of you are very nicely seated. I hope you're comfortably seated here. Imagine if I bring 1 liter of Bisleri water for you. Unless you are thirsty, you will not drink it. Yes or no? Imagine you go out, or if you have gone out in the daytime, it's a sunny day, scorching sun, scorching heat. You spend 2-3 hours, by default you will feel thirsty. And now you being thirsty come here and I offer you a glass of water. How grateful you would be? Yes? And every sip of that water you will relish. Yes? My question is very simple. Because all of you are from scientific background, let me put it in an analytical way. Very simple question. The glass, also the water is same, you are same, but in one situation you do not taste the water. In another situation, when you went out in a sunny day, you came back, you loved drinking that water and you sip slowly and gulp it because you so much love the taste of water. What is the difference? In first situation, you are not thirsty. In the second situation, you are thirsty. Which means, simple, straightforward mathematical equation. Your experience of that relish of drinking that water is directly proportional to your thirst. Simple. Thirst is a state of suffering. Which means, if somebody says, I'm so happy, कितना दुखी होगा 5 मिनट पहले तक ना? He can only experience happiness if somebody says, to the degree he has suffered. Think about it. I'll give you another example. You can put this to any, write down this formula, write down. Happiness is directly proportional to your suffering. Greater the suffering, to that degree you will experience a sense of relief. That sense of relief we identify to happiness. Let's put another example of food. If you're not hungry, if you've eaten it up to here, and now your mother cooks for you the most delicious food that you always loved, out of respect for her, you might eat something, but you will not like it because you do not have any hunger. But the moment you become hungry, the greater the hunger, to that degree, even you will relish and eat khichdi, which you may not like otherwise. Isn't it? It's just straightforward. So what you call happiness in this material life is not at all happiness. You would want to experience suffering again because without it you cannot experience relief. If you want to taste water again, you have to experience thirst. Otherwise you cannot have the experience of water or relief. That is a relationship between your definition of enjoyment. So Krishna says, Mana Shashtani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. Arjuna, you're always suffering. When are you not suffering? Day in, day out you're suffering. And when your suffering is relieved, you say you are happy. This is not worth living. This is useless. You have a better opportunity than that. All right. Yet Arjuna is not convinced. And then he said, Oh Krishna, I'm enjoying my life. Soon everything will be okay. Sounds like us? Why worry? Kabhi khushi, kabhi gam, tararampam, tararampam. That's what he say. Kabhi khushi. You go and talk to your parents. Such a confidence they exhibit. Beta, जीवन इसी का नाम है. सुख दुख तो जीवन में चलता ही रहता है. कभी वो ये नहीं बोलेंगे हमें इसके अलावा कुछ पता नहीं है. Very confidently they say. But the point here is, oh, I'm enjoying my life, soon everything will be okay. Anyways, then comes the second argument. Anyways, who has seen what will happen after death? How many of you say sounds familiar? Raise your hand. अरे मृत्यु के बाद किसने देखा आगे क्या होगा? जी लो जितना जीना है अभी, कोई बात नहीं. Life means, third argument, to enjoy to the fullest. Sounds familiar? अभी बस enjoy करो. भविष्य की कुछ मत सोचो. पास्ट है, अभी जो मिला है भगवान की कृपा से भोगो जितना करना है. Why to care for anything and anyone? How many of you agree this is the motto of our current society? Our current society lives by this motto. This is the slogan for current generation. Yes or no? Raise your hand please. How many of you agree? Well, wait a second. Krishna has not concluded. Krishna has to say something further to you. Krishna says, Arjuna, wait. Let me open your darkened eyes with knowledge. And he says, please repeat. Shariram yadavapnoti yachapi utkramatishvara. थोड़ा जोश में. अगर एंड में भूत की कहानी सुननी है तो मेरा एंथुसियाज्म बढ़ाते रहो, जोश में बोलते रहो. जोश कम हुआ तो कैंसिल कर दूंगा स्टोरी. ओके. शरीरम यदवाप्नोति. क्या बात है भाई, इतना भूत की कहानी सुननी है. ऑलराइट. यच्चापि उत्क्रामतीश्वरा. Somehow we have inherent taste towards horror. Therefore the horror movies are generally hit. Grahitvaitani samyati vayu gandhani vashaya. Those of you who have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, verse number 8. The living entity in the material world carries a different conception of life from one body to another. As the air carries aroma, thus he takes one kind of body again, quits it to take another body. Krishna speaks about reincarnation here. Arjuna, this life is not the end of life. This is not the only life you live. You have another life. Once you die, there is another life. What can be a simple example that we can give to prove something which is beyond our sense perception? Because this life is designed in such a way, we don't remember anything of the past life. And we don't see what happens after death. So something beyond our sense perception, how can we understand? Very simple. Again, mathematical equation. Look at the world around you. Everything in this world works in a cyclical order. Sunrise followed by sunset. Sunset followed by sunrise. Sunrise followed by sunset. Again followed by sunrise. Moonrise followed by moon, setting of the moon. Again, rising of the moon, setting of the moon. Summer season followed by winter season, followed by spring season, followed by rainy season, followed by autumn season. Year after year, every Sunday followed by Monday, Monday followed by Tuesday. Again, the week starts, Sunday followed by Monday, Monday followed by Tuesday. Yes or no? Your days repeat, your weeks repeat, your years repeat. Everything in this creation repeats. Who has taught this? This life is just some singular activity. This is all, misunderstanding created by those who tried intentionally to destroy Vedic civilization. I recently shared one video. Maybe our admins can make a note. If it is not there in the group, they can share, watch it, share it with all of you. The video was how Britishers destroyed Vedic education and what all did. And they talk about the colonization done by Britishers and also by the Islamic invaders. How did they, destroy our culture and civilization, and how Britishers did, and how Christianity promulgated, etc., like that. You can watch it to understand that. So human life is very important. It acts like a train junction. Junction is a place where you can make a choice of your next destination. That's a point which is mentioned by Krishna. So human life is a life of choice, and with choice comes responsibility. If you ever been into a zookeeper has to go to a lion. He will not ask him ghas ya mas. When a zookeeper goes to a cow and buffalo, will not ask ghas and mas. When you go to a hotel, the waiter asks ghas ya mas. Of course, he doesn't ask ghas ya mas. He asks veg and non-veg. मतलब तो वही हुआ ना. So when we have a choice, human life is a life of choices. That is not available for other species. And choice comes with responsibility. Prahlad Maharaj makes a very beautiful point. He says, Kamaram acharat pragyo dharman bhagvataniya dullabham manusham janma tadapi adhruvam arthadam. Translation, meaning of this verse, Prahlad Maharaj, 5-year-old boy, is teaching his other pupils in the school, and he says, Kamaram acharat pragyam. Pragyam means intelligent. All intelligent beings from their tender age, Kamaram is tender age, should take acharan, should cultivate this practice of what? Dharman Bhagavatam. They should cultivate God consciousness. Why God consciousness? Question asked to Prahlad Maharaj. A friend asked, why should I cultivate God consciousness? This is my age to play. I'm only a 5-year-old boy. And then Prahlad says, Manusham Dullabham Janma. This human form of life is very, very rare. In 8.4 million, 84 लाख योनियों में एक मनुष्य योनि आती है जो हमें प्राप्त हुई है, उसको बिल्कुल गंवाना नहीं चाहिए. तदपि adhruvam arthadam. And the glory is such, if in this human form of life, if you can render even a small fraction of devotional life, devotional service, your future lives will be all protected. You will not have to take birth in lower species. Coming back to this discussion, what happens after death? Okay, Arjuna said, oh really? We get new set of body. So my dear Lord, what happens after death? Krishna said, well, you acquire a new set of instruments. Shrotram chakshu spashnam cha rasanam granam evacha adhishtaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. You get another set of body with another set of instruments, ears, eyes, nose, tongue and touch. It could be a body of a dog, or it could be a body of a pig, buffalo, cow, or a human being. And Vishayan upasevate. Whatever body you have got, now you try to enjoy within this body. If a living entity has got a body of a pig, the pig will not love the food that you love to eat. He only loves to eat the waste that you create. How much ever you may try to serve a pig, he will not take what we like. So according to the body, there are conditionings put into it. You cannot change the conditionings. A dog will not speak but bark. And when a man begins to bark, we call it mimicry. But no, a man is not supposed to bark. Man is supposed to speak, but dog is supposed to bark. Now to imagine dog to start speaking from tomorrow, that is uncommon, unheard. It is not possible. When the jiva has got the body of a dog, has to act like a dog. Similarly, the way you have got a body of a man or a woman, you're forced to act accordingly. You cannot change the conditions. You're forced into it. We have to understand the truth about life. We cannot continue living in ignorance. So how do we acquire new set of instruments? Oh, there was video to help you understand that. And the video is not working. No problem. Arjuna, Krishna, if soul exists, then why we do not see it? Oh, that's a good question. As I said, birth and death is beyond self-perception. Nobody has seen his own birth and nobody can see his own death. We undergo the experience of death, but we don't happen after dying. What happens? Arjuna asked, my dear Lord, if soul exists, then why can't we see it? Krishna said, my dear child, what can you really see? What do you really see? Let's see. Utkramantam sitam vapi punjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananu pashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Vimudha nanu pashyanti. A fool na anupashyanti, cannot see. So first of all, let's define who is a fool. Then we'll talk about what he cannot see. What to be seen, he cannot see. So what is the definition of a fool? Let me give you a very simple example. I often quote for this particular case study here. Imagine you have boarded a flight from Pune to Delhi. Okay? How many of you are sitting in a flight? Let's go on a mental journey here. Imagine you have boarded a flight from Pune to Delhi. All of you settled in Air India Express flights. All good. After 1.5 hour journey or approximately 2 hours of journey, your flight is about to land. The pilot makes an announcement. All right, everyone, please tighten up your seat belts. The flight is about to land. Air hostess, my request to you, please prepare for the landing of the flight. Sounds familiar? All good. Everything is going fine. Suddenly there starts a big ruckus in the front part of the flight. Everyone begins to scream and cry in the beginning of the flight, in the front rows of the flight. And you are sitting on the aisle seat and you peek outside in the aisle to see what's happening, and then you realize some terrorists have entered your plane. They have gun in their hand and they're screaming at the top of their voice, we have hijacked it. And then one of the terrorists makes an announcement, the plane is not going to land at Delhi. The plane is now going to Calcutta. You're shocked. Person sitting right next to you has a smile on his face. And you look at him and say, क्या हुआ रे? पता नहीं, plane capture हो गया है. And he tells, दे ताली. बोला दे ताली for what? मैंने टिकट तो दिल्ली का खरीदा था. फोकट में कैलकाटा की जर्नी. What would you call him? अव्वल दर्जे का गधा. विमूढ़ा नानुपश्यन्ति. Imagine the plane have taken a detour, is going towards Calcutta. It's about to land there. Then comes another announcement. The plane will not land at Calcutta. Now we are going to Afghanistan, Kandahar. Everyone is shocked. Oh no! You look at him. He has a bigger smile. And you say, what happened? He says, they double tali. Why? Na ticket, na visa. Free ka international journey. Is he crazy or not? This is what Krishna is saying. Vimudha nanupashyanti. Such a person cannot see how he is about to meet his own destruction. The way he is living his life as if death is never gonna come to me. A question was asked to Yamaraji, what is the most astonishing thing? Yamaraji in Mahabharata replied, Ahani ahani bhutani gacchanta yamalayam shesha sthavanam icchanti kimasharyam matpara. Kimasharyam, it is so amazing. Ahani ahani bhutani, at every moment living entity is dying. Ahani ahani bhutani gacchanta yamalayam. At every moment living entity is dying, going to the Yamraj's abode. But this living entity thinks, बहुत लंबा जीऊंगा, मैं कभी नहीं मरूंगा. This is an example of vimudha nanupashyanti. Pashyanti jnana chakshusha. But how do you see? You see not with your eyes, with jnana chakshu, with the chakshu of jnana, with the eyes of knowledge. So we don't see with the eyes, we see with the knowledge, with the eyes of knowledge. That's the example which is given here. For example, we put so much credibility, we put so much faith on our ability to see. Let me ask a simple question to all of you. How many living entities are there in this room right now? Quickly. 50, 100, 150? Look around. How many living entities are there in this room? 200? That's upper limit? 1,000? 10,000? 1 lakh? What's the number? 100? Okay. Mother said 100. What do you say? 200? How many of you say less than 200? Raise your hand. How many of you say less than 200 living entities in this room right now? Okay, how many of you say less than 1,000? Okay, let's take a bigger number. How many say less than 1,000 are the number of living entities in this room? Raise your hand high up. Okay, how many of you say more than 1,000? Raise your hands up. Okay, some of you say more than 1,000. Those of you know before it? Okay. So some of you, yes sir. How there are more than 1,000 living entities? I'm asking you, you raise your hand, right? You raise your hand, I believe I saw your hand raising up. There are more than 1,000 entities. Or less than 200, less than 1,000? Well, those of you are saying there are less than 1,000 living entities, your answer is 100% wrong. Why? Because you're only able to see human species. What about the ants crawling on the floor? What are the flies flying around? So many bacteria, microbes around. What can you see? Therefore, the point is you cannot really see. That's an example of foolish person. I'll skip this video and not show this one. Let's move forward. Arjuna pondered, people are so much attracted to sense gratification, Krishna. How can they get attracted to you? By the way, you don't seem to be attracted, otherwise you would be sitting and watching IPL match. It looks like IPL series going on. So, but nonetheless, Arjuna had this question. My dear Lord, people are so much inspired, enthused by the movies, the pubs, the bars, the entertainment. How would they get attracted to you? When would they have time for you? Krishna said, wait a second. Let me answer this question for you. And that brings us to the third section of this chapter, M for maintainer, verses 12 to 15. And in this very, very important section from 12 to 15 verse, Krishna says, Arjuna, at all times, sarvatra sarvada, at all situations, I am your maintainer, nobody else. And he gives classic examples and evidences. Before we take that, let's take a quick preview of 3 fundamental questions of life. What are the 3 fundamental questions? First, who created this universe? Second, who created all the living beings? And third, who created life? Let's take a look at what science has to offer an answer for all these 3 fundamental questions. Who created the universe? The science tells us Big Bang Theory. How many of you have busted crackers on Diwali? Raise your hand. And after busting crackers, how many of you run away? Because you know that if it bursts on your hand, your face is going to get really decorated differently. Isn't it? However, this fellow, God knows what was his name, he coined a theory, Big Bang Theory, according to him, by an explosion. All of you beautiful people came out of an explosion. Haji? So ladies don't have to go to the saloon next time. Not saloon, sorry. Man goes to saloon, I believe, right? Ladies goes to where? Boutique. Parlor. All right, parlor. So you can get one little atom bomb, 5 रुपए वाला. आईने को देखते हुए चेहरे के सामने रखना. अपनी बहन या भाई को बोलना उसमें चिंगारी लगाओ. और बड़े प्रयास से अपने मुंह के सामने फटने देना. It will give you natural makeup. Doesn't make sense. This is what is taught. Big Bang Theory, explosion happened. I'm making a joke here, but if you look at it scientifically, then also it makes no sense. First point, he said there was a point, at which explosion happened. The question comes, where did that point came from? Why did it explode in some point of time? Where did the time came from? And who created the bang? And what was its purpose? If there was a bang, somebody must have initiated it. And not only this, uh, if it exploded into an empty space, then where did that empty space? Because somebody must have created empty space, right? Where did the empty space come from? Let's take a look at what Krishna says about it. Please repeat after me. Pitahamasya jagato Mata data pitamaha Vedyam pavitram omkara Riksama yajurevacha. 9th chapter verse number 17, Krishna says, Pita aham asya jagato mata data pitamaha. I am the mother, I am the father, I am the grandfather, I am the one who has created you. So from where everything has come? From Krishna. The choice is yours to believe on that crazy theory of Big Bang or to believe in Krishna's word. Who created all living beings? There is a fellow by the name of Darwin, and after him comes Darwin's theory. Do you know who were your ancestors? बताओ कौन थे तुम्हारे पूर्वज? कितने लगता है आपके पूर्वज बंदर थे? हाथ खड़ा करो. My God, at least one is confident. All right. So can you imagine what an insult to a living entity to tell that your ancestors were monkeys? भैया हमारा तुम्हें पता है कौन थे, तेरे पे डाउट नहीं है, तू कहाँ से आया होगा? You were definitely a mixed species, a wrong combination. Who can coin this Darwin's theory? Who can coin? So how new species are produced? No specific. These are scientific questions actually. How does one species transforms into another? It's all by fluke, by randomness. This is how Darwin writes. And if it offers a fairy tale story to give reasons for the above question. Example, polar bear transformed into whales. I don't have time to go into this thing. You can go and Google it out, Darwin's theory paper. There's a whole paper research which was published. You don't have to read the whole thing, just read the first page. In the very first page, he writes, this is my hypothesis. You understand the word hypothesis? My assumption. How come assumption can be taken as a scientific fact? No logic, no evidence, no proof, not repeatable. Yet they taught it like this. Not only this, so many larger people in the scientific community challenge this and they say, fossil records, this is Stephen Stanley, a scientist, say fossil records show that all species of life, simple, complex, have always existed together. According to Darwin, at one paradigm, monkeys existed, but they were new human beings. And then later on, there were human beings, which means all monkeys transformed into humans. But our experience says, when we are living, monkeys are also living. All right, maybe some monkeys transformed into humans, not all. Even if that is a good assumption, then some point of time in the history, we should have a fossil record which shows when the monkey's fossil record was found, no fossil record of human beings were found. However, the scientists say there is no time in the history up to billions of years ago when if the fossil records of monkeys have been found, the fossil records of human beings were not discovered. Which means all the species have existed at all the times like that. No link between one species to another link has been ever found that the one species have transformed into another species. What does Krishna say? Please repeat. Sarvayonishu Kauntaya Murtaya Sambhantiya Tasam Brahma Mahadyohonir Aham Bij Pratapitaha. Sarva Yonishu Kante, all the living entities, Murtaya Sambhavantiya has become possible because of me. Tasam Brahma Mahadhyonir Aham Bija Pratapita. When the child is born, because the father has sowed the seed. What Krishna says, I, seed, Pratapita. I am the seed giving father. Because of me, all the species have come into existence. Sarva Yonishu Kamteya. Sarva Yonishu, not human Yonishu. All yonis have come into existence because of I. So choice is ours. You want to believe some Darwin theory or want to believe what Krishna says? Who created life? The next fundamental questions. Then we have chance theory. Richard Dawkins, which talks about at one point of time unicellular combined together to make a complex cellular. From that, eventually, our DNA and RNA was created. All right, if that is the case, we are nothing but a bundle of chemicals who mixed together and created life. Why not scientists are able to mix chemicals and produce life? If that is what we've been taught until now, you mix chemicals and produce life, there is not even a single incident of it. Now, modern science recognized this DNA and RNA are the most advanced, what they call as genetic codes. This genetic code is so complex. Everything about our life is written in that, how it's going to grow, how it's going to function. And through that RNA, DNA, this whole building blocks build up and grows like this. A question is asked by the scientists here, if for a simple Android operating system or any mobile app, there would be a developer for sure. They call it genetic code. I'm not saying this is a scientific terminology. For every code, there is a coder, developer. Then who is the coder of genetic code? That automatically happened. It happened randomly. You just see how systematically they're trying to brainwash our mind that there is no God, there is no higher power like this. Third question, where did this code came from? What is the source of living cell? Etc. etc. Who created emotion? And what does Krishna says for this? Mamamamso jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. This is something we just read, 15th chapter, verse number 7, where Krishna says, all the living entities, Mamayvamsu, Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta, they are my part and parcel. So, it's reasonable to accept what Krishna says. It's unreasonable, unrealistic, unlogical, illogical to accept what the scientists give us a reason about the fundamental questions of life, either be Darwin's theory, Big Bang theory, or Charles Dawkins' theory about who created life. Now, coming to the subject matter, who maintains us? Who created us? From where life came, how did all these species came? That comes from the Lord. That is proven. Who is maintaining us? Is it the government maintaining us? Is the big corporate houses maintaining us? The farmers maintaining us? Who maintains us? Let's take a look what Krishna says. All of you have Bhagavad Gita? If you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, please take out 15th chapter, verse number 12. Yadaditya gatam tejo jagat bhasyate akhilam yat chandramsi yachagno tat tejo vidhimamakam. Very straightforward Sanskrit, Krishna. Tat tej vidhimamakam. Or what teja? Yadaditya gatam tejo. Aditya means sun. The sunshine, the prowess of sun, that comes from me. Jagat bhasyate akhilam. Because of that sunshine, it is lighting up the whole creation. That comes from me. Tat tejo vidhimamakam. Then Krishna says, Yat chandramsi, the potency of the moon, chandrama, that light, moonlight, tat tejo vidhimamakam. That tej is mine. Yat cha agnaho, the effulgence of the fire, the light of the fire, that teja comes from me. So the sun, the moon, and the fire, their energy comes from Krishna. Not the fossil fusion or something they teach about it. Okay. 15.13, Krishna says, how many of you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita? So those of you don't have, how many times should I remind? Always bring a copy of Bhagavad Gita, alright? If you don't have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, we have kept a special table for you, where at the end of the program you can pick it up. 15.13, Krishna says, Gama Vishya cha bhutani dha. Areva. Okay, you have it. Okay. Dharyami ahamojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva somabhutva rasatmakaha. Very simple Sanskrit. Gam avishya cha bhutani. Gam, the planets, avishya cha bhutani. I enter into the planets. Dharyami ahamojasa. How is the planets floating in its orbit? Krishna says, Gam avishya cha bhutani dharyami aham ojasa. Aham, I, ojasa means power. Dharyami, I am holding the planets in their orbits. It's because of my energy the planets are floating in their orbits. Pushnami chaushadhi sarva. Which means, Pushnami means nourishing. Chaushadhi means vegetables. The vegetables that have nourishing potency, Somo bhutva rasatmakaha, which is given by the moonlight that comes from me. If the planet would not stay in its orbit, if the vegetal doesn't have nourishing capacity, can you live within this body? Who maintains the body? Which means Krishna maintains the body. All right, text number 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva. All right, आपके पास खाना तो अच्छा है, खाने का पाचन का शक्ति कहाँ से आता है? According to Ayurveda, your ability to digest food depends on Jathar Agni. In this 14th verse, Krishna says, I am that fire. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashtritaha Pranapana Samayuktaha. For you to live with this body, you don't only require Jataragni, you also require Prana Apana Vayu, the inhale and exhale. You know, we have been talking for so long. How many of you are consciously breathing in and breathing out, or it's happening automatically? It's happening automatically? Krishna says, it's because of me. You didn't have to. Can you imagine driving a car like this? Imagine you fall asleep in the drive itself. You will end up somewhere, but this body functions like that. Prana, Pana, Samayukta. Pachami Annam Chaturvidam. Like that Krishna says. So, I maintain the gross body. I am the origin of the sun. On the screen, please. Moon, fire, giving us the energy of life and power of digestion. I maintain the subtle body. That is 15th verse. Let's go to the next verse. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha Vedaischa sarver hameva vedyo vedanta krid veda vedeva chaham sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. I reside in the heart of every living entity. Mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha. From me, mata smriti means knowledge, smriti jnanam wisdom, apohanam cha. Smriti means remembrance, jnanam means knowledge, apohanam means forgetfulness. It all comes from me. How many of you had an experience just before entering the exam hall? You had been mugging up one answer because you knew for sure that question gonna come in the exam. And you enter the exam hall, you open the paper, and the very first question, the same question whose answer you had been memorizing for the last 1 hour. And before coming, you were so short that you have memorized it perfectly. Maybe you have repeated that answer to 4 or 5 of your friends. And the moment you sit down in exam hall to write, nothing comes to mind. How many of you had that experience? Please raise your hand. And like, अरे अभी तो याद करा था, कहाँ गया? So, matha smritir jnanam apohanam cha. That's about subtle body. And not only that, Krishna also maintains the spiritual body. Vedaischa sarve ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda vedeva chaham. I appear in the form of Vedic knowledge and opens the darkened eye, which means enlighten a living entity how to establish a relationship with the Supreme Lord so that Jivatma can go back home, back to Godhead. And the very final section, last few verses, this is a very small chapter, 20 verses only. And now 16 to 18 verses. That is said to be essence. There's nothing much to discuss, but I'll just summarize over here. So this is Vedic in terminology. There is a discussion on the word of Shara, Akshara. Shar means temporary. Akshara means permanent. So Krishna now speaks about the Vedic terminology, what is Shara, what is Akshara, and what is beyond. Shara is this body, Akshara is the soul, and what is beyond Shara and Akshara is Paramatma, the super soul. That is a discussion here. So Krishna is that super soul which is being discussed, and this is the summary of Vedanta Sutra. So three major subject matter of Vedanta Sutra: Shara, Akshara, and Paramatma. So what is Shara? The body. Akshara, the living entity within this rental property. And what is beyond Shara and Akshara is Paramatma, like this. And finally, Arjuna asked Krishna, what are the activities of one who has understood the conclusion of Vedanta, which means to take shelter of Paramatma? So Krishna says, such a person will always engage in devotional service. The last two verses for today. Yo mam evam sammudho janati purushottamam सा सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत. सा सर्वविद् bhajati mam. One who knows, janati purushottama. I am the best among all. Purushottama. Sa sarvavid bhajati mam. Bhajati means devotion. But naturally, he will want to render devotional service unto me. Sarva bhavena bharata. Sarva bhavena bhava, emotion. With emotion, he will approach me and render service. And the essence of all Arjuna is Iti guhyatamam shastram. Arjuna, iti means thus. What I have spoken to you. Guhyatamam shastram. Guhyatara, guhyatamam. I have given you the most confidential knowledge. Iti guhyatamam shastram. Idam uktam maya naga. Which is now revealed to you by me, Maya Anaga, which means a faultless or sinless one. Etad buddhva buddhimansya. Buddhva understands. Whoever understands this wisdom, buddhimansya will become the most intelligent. Krit krityascha bharata. And all his endeavors will meet success. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna concludes with a blessing. Arjuna, I have told you the most confidential part of the Vedic scripture. Iti guhyatamam jnanam shastram. Idam uktam mayanaga. You are sinless one, therefore I have told you about this wisdom. Etad buddhva buddhiman syat. One who will understand it will become the most intelligent. Krat krityascha bharata. And all his endeavor will meet perfection in life. With that, we come to the conclusion of the 15th chapter. The main subject matter of this chapter was to reveal to us our eternal home, Goloka Vrindavan, to tell us about the nature of the spiritual world, and to also tell us if you don't aim, tasyeva heto prayateta kovidu nalabhyate yat brahmatam upariyada. If you don't aim for the highest goal in life, you will continue to remain in this material creation, samsara chakra etasmin jantura jnana mohita. Going up the Ferris wheel, coming down the Ferris wheel, higher planets, lower planets, going through the 8.4 million species of life. That was a discussion from 15.6 to 15.12 and 13, where Krishna told Arjuna, Arjuna, you are unnecessarily struggling for existence or for survival. Give up this. Come back to me. Mamai vamsa jivaloka. No, that is not the word. Natad bhasate suryo nashashankana pavaka yad gatva narivartante tad dhama param. One who comes to my abode will never come back. So I started our discussion with pretext and context. Battlefield was just a pretext. Arjuna asking a question to fight or not fight is only a pretext. What is the context? Krishna wants all of us to give up our suffering state of life and develop our relationship with Him and come back to Him, back to Godhead. As a loving Father, He is advising us, whoever you are, you become the king of the whole world. You cannot be free from Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, Adi Atmika Kaleshas. Problems because of other living entities, because of one's own mind, and problems because of nature. Birth, death, old age, and disease is for everyone. Nobody is immune to it. Why won't you continue struggling in this temporary existence when you have an access to eternal life of Sat, Chit, Ananda? By giving that explanation, this chapter ends, and then we'll have a next chapter, chapter number 16, where Arjuna would ask a question to Krishna. And the chapter would be about there are two kinds of living entities in this world. One with inherent divine nature, and one has inherent demoniac nature. In this world, two kinds of living entities always exist, divine and demoniac. How many of you have ever consulted an astrologer? ये जन्म पत्री दिखाई है, कुछ लोगों ने दिखाई है. तो आपकी जन्म पत्री देख के आपको बताते होंगे कई बार आपका योग क्या है. देव योग कहते हैं गुण, गण गण। अब मैं ये नहीं पूछूंगा किस किस के असुर गण है, तो समझ गए ना कहाँ से आया है। तो अगले चैप्टर में आपको उसके बारे में ज़्यादा जानने को मिलेगा। जब नॉलेज नहीं था तो हम सोचते थे असुर कौन असुर। अभी आप ये चैप्टर पढ़ोगे तो आपको कॉन्फिडेंस बन जाएगा असुर कौन होता है, कैसे लक्षण है, और शायद उसका साक्षात्कार भी हो। All right, so I'll pause here for today. Thank you very much for your kind attention.